Hi guys, I am going to change Cynthia today. I am going to put her in this cute bee sleeper I got when I went to Toys R Us. That was about a month ago now. It's a white sleeper. The top or around the neck and the wrists have this like coral color scalloped edge. And then it's got 3 coral bows going down the front. It's made by Koala Baby and it's a size newborn. And then on the sleeper, it's got these cute little black and yellow bees with the wings are kind of that coral color. And then it's got like their paths and like this glittery silver fabric that when you feel it, you can feel it's almost like a puff paint. You can feel the glitter in it. And I am going to do Herlanda's tag. This is about a month old, and honestly, I watch Herlanda's channel, so I don't know how I missed this one. This is my favorite trip. And I thought this was appropriate because some kids are getting out of school this week. I know my kids are getting out of school next week. So school's getting out and talking about trips for the summer and such. So I thought this would be a fun tag to kind of kick off summer. So question 1. Okay. Here are the questions thinking about your favorite trip. Question 1. Where did you go? This wasn't really a family trip. My favorite trip was it was a favorite. It was a life-changing trip as well. Was 10 years ago. Yeah, it was 10 years ago. I went to Guatemala. And some people out there may have no idea where Guatemala is. It is in Central America, kind of. I believe it's right under Mexico. It's in Central America, below Mexico, above South America. And I think it's right next to El Salvador, or close to. If I showed a map, I could show you exactly where it's at. Number 2, what kind of transportation did you use to get there? An airplane. That was the first time I've ever flown. Had a lot of anxiety about flying. Up till then, like I said, I had never been on an airplane in my life. My parents growing up, we never really did trips. We always went to stupid car shows. And there we go. We always went to car shows when I was growing up, and we were always driving there. And we drove wherever we went. I had never been on an airplane. And yeah, I had a lot of anxiety, especially in Guatemala. Their runway for landing is shorter than a normal runway. So basically, when you're getting ready to land, the captain will come on and say, prepare for landing, brace yourself. And yeah, that isn't an understatement. After that was the second flight I'd ever been on, but the takeoff or the landing, we flew from Fargo to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Houston, and then Houston to Guatemala. And the Fargo to Minneapolis wasn't that way, and the Minneapolis to Houston wasn't that way. But yeah, we're preparing for landing, brace yourself. It was exactly what you had to do. So that was actually the 3rd flight I'd ever been on. But yeah, that was the first time I ever flew. Number 3. What was with you on this trip? I don't know if it's supposed to be who or what. It was just, I don't know, typical stuff that you take when you go on a trip. I also had, they're called daddy dolls. And they're made for children whose parents, or they were initially made for children's parents who are in the military. So they started out with, I think, being called Hug a Hero. And I believe they've turned into daddy dolls now because more people use them for more than just the military purpose. And when my husband deployed, he actually bought one for me. So my husband's daddy doll came on the trip with us. So he can't say he was never in Guatemala. We've got the pictures to prove it. But other than that, it was just like typical stuff. We brought my laptop. I believe I had my camcorder. I know I had my camera. And we brought Army Wives. I remember watching that in the hotel. And if it's the question should have been, who did you go with? Or who was with you on this trip? It was my best friend, Katie. And yeah, the question why it was my best trip kind of answers why my best friend was with, or why I went with my best friend. Okay, number 4. Did you bring a Reborn or Silicone with you on this trip? No. At this time, this was kind of when I was in my lull with dolls. I still had them, but there was a purpose for this trip, and especially flying international. I wasn't going to bring a doll aside from the daddy doll that we brought, or the Hug a Hero. So technically we brought a doll. We brought the cloth doll that was my husband. But other than that, I didn't bring any other dolls because there was specific reasons why we were going, which I'll answer later. And it would have been too much work. It was kind of a fun trip vacation, but it wasn't something, how to word it. I wouldn't have brought a doll even if it would have been now, because down there, it's not the safest environment. And when you're going around doing the touristy things, you're doing a lot of walking. We had a stroller because we had 2 babies with, and it was cumbersome with the stroller with the babies. Honestly, if we would have had like a baby carrier, it would have been a lot easier. But I wouldn't, even if I was into dolls at the time, I wouldn't have brought one. 5, was the trip geared towards relaxation or adventure? Neither. To answer the question, we were going down to finish her adoption and bring her son back. We did take extra time when we were there because I had never been to Guatemala. This was her 3rd child she adopted from there. So she had been there a few trips. She had gone on even visit trips where she was able to do a little bit more touristy stuff. And we wanted to see more than what we did. But part of the issue was timing as well as a translator / driver. Especially, this was down when adoptions were kind of a big booming business in Guatemala. So there were lots of different drivers and translators that Americans trusted. I shouldn't say lots of, there was a few of them. And so in order to go on these trips and stuff, you needed a driver, which was also your translator. So you kind of had to schedule it, but you had to schedule it around them going and translating for other people. Like when we had to go to the embassy, when we met with the adoption lawyer, we had to have a translator with, because she spoke, they kind of have, they typically in Guatemala, it's similar to Spanish, but they speak like a Mayan Spanish, and some people straight out speak Mayan. So It's kind of like a mixture of Spanish and Mayan language. So even if you spoke Spanish, there's going to be probably words that you don't understand that they're speaking. But having the translator, especially going with the adoption stuff, you needed a translator. And we only were able to have our driver translator for 1 day. So we were staying in Guatemala City, and we did go to Antigua to see the Catholic Church ruins. There was a Catholic church that was built in, I believe, the 1400s. That an earthquake. It was a Catholic church, and can't think of the name. Like where nuns stay. Oh, I cannot think of the name. It looked like it would have been beautiful when we were at the ruins. But we took some time and walked around there, and then we went to the open market for a while, as well as Giovanni, our translator / driver, took us to this restaurant that served traditional Guatemalan food, and it was actually really good. Number 6, what was your favorite road trip snack? Oh, road trip / travel snack. In the plane, I didn't really eat much. We had some time from Fargo to Minneapolis, so I think we got food there. Yeah, we did. And then our flight from Houston to Guatemala, there was actually in-flight food. But I didn't really eat it because it wasn't very appetizing. Then when we got to Guatemala, our translator driver picked us up at the airport to take us to our hostel. I can't remember what it was called. It was Casa de something. I want to say Casa de Hostel. They do have big hotels, but my friend learned that, at the big hotels, they nickel and dime. They charge outrageous prices. And they're crawling with Guatemalan police that had been harassing people with adoptions, as well as there were some strange people coming down there to do adoptions. So she didn't necessarily feel safe in the big hotels in Guatemala City. But she heard through an adoption group of this small Casa de Hostel. I want to say Casa de Hostel. It was a house, like a plantation style house that was converted into a hotel. Each room had its own restroom. It was 2 beds, 2 like full-size beds in our room, a small television, and a small bathroom. And I believe every room had that. Then they had we were down there during rainy season, which is their winter. They had like these open porches that you could go spend time on and sit on. They had this, in the center of it, there was a huge dining room that you could go down and order food. They didn't have room service, but you could go down and order. And they had a whole kitchen staff that was there 24/7. And their food was like very reasonable. I think when it transferred back into American dollars from Guatemalan, like a meal for her son, and I cost like less than $5. And that, I mean, we were actually giving food because they gave us so much. We would have them pack it up, and there was a bus, they called them the chicken buses, that would stop right in front of the hotel, so we would give the food to somebody getting off the bus because we didn't want to waste it. And the country is a relatively poor country. What made this your favorite trip? It was the first big trip I ever took. I took it with my best friend, which sadly, she's still a friend. We're still friends, but I wouldn't necessarily consider her a best friend anymore. We've just grown apart. But we still keep in touch and stuff. It was my first big trip. It was exciting. I got to go down and help finish the adoption for her son. And I think on that trip, like, I bonded with her son as well. Like, honestly, of her 3 kids, I feel closest to him. Even when my husband got back from Iraq, this son instantly bonded with my husband. He was, like, always on my husband, like, clinging to him. And unfortunately, he does have RAD. And there was a time that we were honestly considering they were going to sign over, I can't even think of what it's called. Basically, because they had adopted him, but they were going to sign over guardianship to us. They were talking about it at one time because he had bonded really well with my husband and I versus her and her husband. He was okay with her husband, but he had issues with her, not because of her, but because of what happened with his foster mom. And this was before I got pregnant. We were considering this because it was almost like he needed to be in a home where it was just him. So we had actually talked about it and gone to a lawyer, but I ended up getting pregnant, so it didn't work out in that way. Plus, we ended up moving not long after. So, I mean, I'm still, of her 3 kids, yes, she's my favorite of the 3. I will admit that. I love the other 3 because the other 2 are still our godchildren as well. It's just, you know, being down there doing that with picking him up, being there, being able to bring him back on this big, scary adventure. You know, it's something special. Number 8, what trips are you looking for in the future? Obviously this summer, doing the meetup. Where, you know, going back to Minneapolis, seeing Crystal, seeing my friend Heather. So far, we are the only 3 fully confirmed. The other ones are still kind of up in the air. But we still want to make it a good time, even if it's just the 3 of us. So, excuse me. But yeah, that was my favorite trip. I will post the questions down below. And I will also link Herlonda's video to it. So, I mean, you can either answer below if you don't make videos, you know, what was your favorite trip? Or if you want to make your own tag that Herlonda did, you know, go ahead. So I hope everybody has a great Tuesday, and I will see everyone later. Bye.